Investing Insights with Right Property Group, exploring trends in real estate and helping property investors gain financial security.
Welcome everybody, Steve Waters and Victor Kumar from Right Property Group, back again for, I think this is our last
This is the last one.
Yeah, the last film version for the year of our
2020.
Investing Insights podcast. And clearly what a year it's been.
It's been phenomenal for some and testing for a few others, depending on where you are in life and depending on how COVID has impacted you, your job. And I think one of the key things that has come out is that there's no such thing as job surety.
Do you know, and that's really, when you drill back to it, that's probably the reason a lot of people want to invest in any asset class for that matter, is that security or that the choice that is given once you hit that end goal of whether it be residual income or wealth or a combination of both. But absolutely, it's changed everything that we know. And we've talked about this many times over the last 12 months. But when we sit back and reflect, there are so many instances where potentially the shape of investing has changed considerably.
Yes.
The fundamentals haven't changed, albeit I think people will forget.
Very quickly when life returns to normal.
Exactly. But in the meantime, what they'll do is people may be tending to forget about the fundamentals and what actually is important around investing, rather than I won't call it a fad, but a short-term scenario like we have today, being COVID. And whilst I say it has shaped the future of investing in some components, whether that be location or how or whatever it may be, there will be certain aspects which will never change. And unfortunately, people might fall into the trap and pay the consequences over the years to come. But it's been a massive year.
Absolutely. And one of the key things that is brought to the forefront is the fact that when you're looking at investing, it's brought to the forefront of investors that it's not just about buying property, it's actually getting to that income portion of it to actually have income replacement via investment. Whereas pre-COVID, most people are thinking of, I need to buy an investment property. I need to buy 1, 2, 3 or build up equity. But now more than ever, everyone's talking about what's the cash flow going to be like going forward and how can I get more surety in terms of lifestyle, and lifestyle equals cash flow, right? Or cash flow equals lifestyle. Whereas previously people were largely concentrating on equity, whereas equity is more wealth. But you can't spend wealth if you haven't got the ability to hold on to these properties.
Yeah, you could have all the equity in the world, but if you don't have the cash flow to support it,
Exactly.
well, you're not in a very strong position. And not that I think that the face of investing has changed, where people are going to have this massive pivot or aha moment back to, well, this is the way I should have done it. I think that will come in the years down the track. But it's really more about, it's not buy and hold, it's buy and manage.
Yes.
And I think that's the crucial point.
That's
People tend to, as all the books say, create a passive income, and it's not passive. There's an element of work when you've got several properties that you need to manage your managers, and there's maintenance components and everything else that goes around it. But it's what we do now. And even more importantly, as we head into the Christmas break, what can we do now to manage our position, or what homework and strategic steps and moves that we need to be doing now during the Christmas period that'll put us into a good position for the beginning of next year through to the end of next year. Because it won't be, well, let's go away, have a break, have a mental shut down, and then create some New Year's resolution goals and think that we'll click our fingers and it'll just gain momentum itself. It's usually what happens now at the tail end of the year will have a direct bearing on that initial startup of the following year.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we strongly advocate is, and we've said this before around different festive seasons as well, but more so this year, is that you don't want the festive season to derail your plans. In fact, you want to use this time to take lessons of what 2020 brought and pre-plan 2021 using the metrics of what you've learned. And importantly, when you're looking at the lessons that 2020 has brought in terms of investing, in terms of life, in terms of work, we need to use that to help shape our future. And earlier in the year, at the beginning of 2020, because it was a round number, we thought we'd bring to the forefront something that we've been doing for our clients for years now, which is helping them design the decade. And more so now than ever, we've been working behind the scenes with a lot of clients to help set them up for the decade. But given that we've got very low interest rates, given that we've got potentially a really good run in terms of price increase and rent increase in the immediate future, it's important to relook at your plan, reset up the decade, because it is a rolling decade, and we need to move and tag along with what the economy does, what life gives us. So it'll be a really good idea to relook at it and look at it from a decade perspective. What's going to happen next year? What's going to happen in 3 years' time, 5 years' time, and where is it heading in 10 years' time?
It's a good point, because it is a rolling decade, and there are always minor or sometimes even major adjustments that you need to do. But the importance is how you start, because if your strategy absolutely pigeonholes you into one lane and you can't move out of that lane, that's the wrong strategy, as we've talked about before, because you throw into it seismic events such as a COVID, or even before that a GFC, and even APRA to a degree over the last decade, and those that weren't or didn't have the ability to tack almost became a victim of their own circumstances.
They did.
So it's very important that you always are in the now, but you have a very firm focus.
Correct. Yeah.
In the future.
That's
but
right.
You can't be too holistic, because those long-term goals and just plucking numbers. Well, I want to create an income, a residual income of $100,000. Let's call it in 20 years' time. 20 years is a long way away.
Very far away.
And as humans, we tend to lose focus over that period. So hence we design the decade where we can say, well, let's set some tangible 1, 3, 5 and 10-year goals, because they're always just in front of us. And we're in the game all the time, so to speak. We're always interested, because the ABS data shows us that most investors hold their property for 5 years and then they lose interest. It's either they have made $1 million and it was purely by more good luck than good management, or they haven't made $1 million and they've lost interest, and the next shiny thing has taken their attention. So if we set those 1, 3, 5 and 10-year goals, we're always interested, we're always tuned.
I'm glad you plucked a figure, right? And you mentioned 100,000. And one of the things when we are having initial discussions with a new investor or even a seasoned investor is we ask, where's this heading? What's the income goal? And you'd be amazed as to how many people come up with that $100,000, because it seems to be drummed into us. It's a number that's well rounded, and it's a good place to start, right? But certainly as the journey goes, as the journey unfolds, it needs to be readjusted. So that's why we do the reviews, and we look at fine tuning it. And you mentioned that you need to have the ability to tack. Now you only have the ability to tack only if you know where you are right now. Right, so
very true.
You'd want to use this festive season. So because I'm assuming that you'll have some time off work and perhaps a few days to recover from the hangover as well. But you'd want to use this time to actually know where you are right now, so that you can pre-plan for what's going to happen for the rest of 2021. If you don't get your baseline, it's going to be very hard, right? So I'm going to pull an analogy over here, and you'll relate to this, Steve. If you're going to Mudgee, as an example, by road, obviously, and as you're traveling along, you'll see these little signposts saying, 51, 150. They're the kilometers left to the destination, right? And this is why we say 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, 10 years, right? Because we need to check, okay, we've only got 50 kilometers left, so I can push a little bit more and then have a rest there. Or if it's 150 kilometers, I better have a rest now and regroup and refocus, so I can last the journey for that 150 kilometers. And that's the same with investing as well, that you need to have your milestone check-ins, and you need to have your rest periods, and you need to have your push-through periods as well.
That's a good point, because the rest periods, that could be a consolidation phase.
Yes.
Your push-through periods might be times what we've got now.
Yes.
Where we may have been in that consolidation phase, but the ecosystem, the environment that's been given to us has given us the opportunity to be able to execute opportunities as we identify them, even though it probably wasn't in the plan.
Yep.
But the circumstances have determined that we should be acting now. Now, that's not for everybody. That's a general comment. but it's the truth. There are a lot of, and you can say we're filming, sophisticated investors
Yes.
that are using this moment in time as a moment in time. And if we go back to the beginning of COVID, and to be fair, none of us knew what the ramifications from a health perspective was going to be of COVID. Are we all going to die? Is there going to be a vaccine in a couple of weeks? No one knew. But what we did know was that the economic and the financial ramifications from large economies down to the individual was a thing. It was going to happen. But as we got used to the fact of a lockdown, and we didn't like it initially, but then I grew to love it. But we got used to it. And I think economies got used to it as they got mobility. And we mentioned this many, many times during the beginning of COVID. And a good point is watch the transactions or watch the high intent in search activity go in line with mobility or lack of mobility. And it was pretty obvious to see they mirrored each other.
I think the best metrics is to just have a look at Victoria.
It's a perfect example. And but as a result of that, as we got used to it, the sophisticated investor said, okay, now what can I do? We know the fundamentals are still there. We know that ABC 1, 2, 3 is, and I'm being quite general clearly, is all in our favour. What can I do to take advantage of this situation in my own unique circumstances? And so there are a lot of people that purchased and are continuing to, and there are a lot of people that have sat on the sidelines, and a lot of the time rightly so, because of job security, as you mentioned earlier on in the podcast, and their family unit and how the income is going to affect them there. Have they got enough buffers? Have they got enough capacities and thresholds to be able to survive unemployment? Hopefully they did. But then there are also people that are just that sit on the sidelines, and it's human nature to start seeing results of other people before they dip their toe into the market, and that's referred to, or you could think of that as FOMO.
Yes,
soon as people start seeing results, then, well, I better get on that wagon as well. And you get the majority to do so, which is what we're starting to see now throughout certain sectors of Australia where, well, here's an example. On the weekend, there was 135 people at one particular open home.
Yeah, unheard of. Yeah.
Think how far we've come in 3 months. Call it 6 months. It was not very long ago that every major institution was talking around 30% drops. Then it was 20, then it was 10, then it was 0. Now some say it's up to 18 to 23%. All in such a short period of time.
That's right. How fast it changes.
Exactly, but it also shows you how fickle people's opinions and interpretations of data and guesstimations can be.
Absolutely.
You don't have to be very intelligent to sound or be negative around a market, but there has to be a air of, or a certain degree of confidence within yourself, confidence within your ability to actually pull the trigger when everybody else isn't, or go against the grain based on history, based on experience.
Yes.
And that's what a lot of people have done.
That's true. And this is, I guess, in this day and era, with social media, Facebook, Twitter, all this sort of stuff, right? People are using that as a metrics as to where to invest. So what they're doing is really investing using someone else's metrics rather than bring it back to themselves to say, okay, this is what I've got right now, and therefore this is what suits me from my financials, my plans for next couple of years based on career, based on family, based on your tolerance for debt as well.
Age
as well. Yeah, that's very important. And we really need to bring it back to basics, as we keep saying every single podcast and every single opportunity that we get, because it is there that people get derailed. If you stray away from the basics, everything else that you do will not be on strong foundations, and therefore it'll collapse at the worst time possible. Right now, it's fairly easy to hold property because you've got record interest, low interest rates. We've got rents in most areas increasing, and I have keyword being most in there. And so,
or a lot.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah. And because it's easier to hold, people are also stretching themselves just a little bit, right? But we need to be looking at it from a worst case scenario, prepare for the worst case and aim for the best case. Whereas most people do it in reverse. They just prepare for the best case and really they disregard the worst case scenario.
That makes, as you were saying that around the debt situation and learning, because they're in the now, and potentially they didn't even have the experience of yesterday
Yes,
and what has happened and what could potentially happen. But debt is a great servant, but it's a very bad master. And unfortunately, in the future, people will learn that lesson the hard way. So debt is, there's productive debt and unproductive debt. And it won't take long. In fact, we've already started to see some of the media or the ads on social media, television, and wherever it may be, around equity and accessing equity. And, you know, the
I remember the old CBA ads, Equity Mate?
Equity Mate, with the guy in the driveway in front of his boat and his car. How'd you get it? Equity Mate. It's nothing against CBA, just saying. There's the disclaimer. But we're starting to see that type of rhetoric in the market again as well. You know, the cost of money is cheap, so therefore I might go and take the 100% write down government incentive now and go spend $150,000 because I can write it down all in the first year. But people's understanding is we still got to pay for it. And what happens when you can't?
Yeah.
So once again, unproductive debt and productive debt. There are so many variables in the economy at the moment, and if you've got good stock of your own situation, then act accordingly, whether that be to do nothing or to move forward. But use this Christmas period as a good time to reset and do some housekeeping.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you and I have known each other for a few decades, and you know that this is, for me, the most exciting time because I get to reset. I look at my goals, and I'm big on setting goals. But this is where a lot of people also get derailed because they get this big, nice, fluffy goals that they're going to do X, Y, and Z, but there's no flow on from there. So all it is a really good example, right? And this is probably not related to property, but it is in a way. The gym membership in the beginning of the year spikes, right? It goes up probably 200, 300%. But by February, most of them get into dormant stage because they've let life take over. They've also, it's been a moment in time in terms of, I need to get fit, I need to join a gym. But they haven't worked out what the end goal is going to be. And hence, they've started the journey. But as we're talking about investment, there's three aspects of it, right? You got to acquire, you got to manage, and then you got to consolidate. So they're just basically in the acquire phase of joining a gym, but there's no management of it in the sense to say, you know what, I need to get up every morning at this time and get someone to hold me accountable to turn up at the gym.
I was just going to say that it's a lonely journey when you're doing it yourself.
That's right.
And pretty much the same with anything. If there's not that network of people around you to encourage you and to hold you accountable, you lose faith, you lose momentum. And
you break habit.
Nothing's relevant to you. It's easy to quit and just to let it be, and you know, life will take care of itself scenario, rather than as a collective moving forward and holding each other accountable. And that could be related to I know it is for me in investing. We hold each other accountable on our goals. And so does our network. Imagine trying to do it yourself. Well, when we first started, it was ourselves. But the beauty was, win or lose, nobody knew because there was nobody else really doing it that you could, as a collective, talk about until it did become that way. Today, there is so much information that is readily available and support that is readily available to anyone in no matter what investment class they're looking to get involved in, whether it be shares or businesses or property or whatever it may be. The thing is that people don't have an information problem; they have an execution problem.
Yes,
there's so much information. It's just, well, which way do I go? Do I go over here? Do I go over there? What's the strategy that suits me? And I'm not even sure that they actually ask themselves that question. It's more about what is the best strategy rather than what is the strategy that suits me.
Yeah, it's the quality of the question.
The quality of the question will determine the quality of the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at investing and using festive season to actually reset your goals, and knowing that there are three facets of investing, which is the acquisition, the managing of it, and then the consolidation, right? So let's talk about acquisition first. Whether you are a beginning investor or whether you are a accomplished investor, you've got a couple of properties under your belt. First of all, we need to look at it from a statistics point of view. Circa 2.5 million investors in Australia, right, out of a population of 26 million. So that tells you that you are a rare breed to begin with. And Out of that 2.5 mil, only about 26,000 own more than 6 investment properties. Not saying that the number is pertinent, but for them to own more than 6 investment properties, they've done some planning in that sense. So from the elite of the elite are only a minuscule, so circa 25,000 people, right? And they've done something different. They've pre-planned, but they also know where their position is to begin with, so they know what platform they're starting off with, how much capital they've got, how much cash flow tolerance they've got, and they're also discussing with their peers, with their consultants, with their advisors as to what my next step should be. So it's not a journey that they undertaking alone. They're taking the journey with the support people. That's like a racing driver, right? So the guy races around, but there's a huge support team in the pits, changing the tires, making sure that they're calling out if they're running into trouble. So they're pre-predicting issues and speed humps along the way, so that it makes the journey less chaotic in that sense. So investing is exactly the same. You are on a race, but you're on a race by yourself. You're racing against your own goals, own set goals. You're not racing against, Joe down the road has bought a duplex, so I need to buy a duplex in that area as well. It's not that, because it's tiered against your finance, and you're using the experience and the guidance of your advisors to help make that journey a lot faster and a lot more fruitful to get to the end goal.
So that's the acquisition stage, which all starts, and everybody says the same thing. It starts with a goal in mind, to reverse engineer it so that a strategy is created around your unique circumstances. So I want to repeat that. The strategy is around your unique circumstances rather than what is a good strategy. Because there's 100 strategies out there and there's 1,000 strategies that are rubbish, but there's also a lot that work. But what's the one that suits you? Because unless you can execute, it's not a strategy, it's a concept.
Yep.
And there's a big difference between a strategy and a concept. A concept is when you just, that looks really good, but we haven't done anything. Then once you start doing something, the strategy is deployed.
That's right.
So we've talked about the acquisition.
So with the acquisition, you need to plan.
There's planning
before you actually buy. Most people, they go ready, fire, aim, right? We need to go ready, aim, fire.
Correct.
So the ready bit is getting your finance in order, right? So making yourself more attractive to the bank, knowing where you are in terms of cash flow and capital, and doing basic housekeeping, right? So it's not just property. You need to look at all of your expenditure as well. In terms of insurance, like I'll give an example, right? So my comprehensive car insurance was due, right? And I've always been with a certain insurer, and I just went to compare the market and plugged in, and getting exactly the same, I saved myself $2,000 a year, right? Now that's looking
on a
up
car?
On a car.
What is that, a Bentley or something?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. No, the Bentley's a different story.
That was on a Kia.
Yeah, no. So by saving the 2,000, now all of a sudden I freed up cash flow, right, to help hold on to my investments, as an example. So you're looking at that, what can you do without changing lifestyle significantly from what you've got in terms of expenditure? What can you free up? It could be something as simple as you're paying principal and interest on your loans at the moment. Can you turn that to interest only to help use that principal component that you're already using right now to help hold on to another property?
So if we talk about ready, aim, fire, as you aptly put it, the readiness that we're starting to compile now, other than our strategy, other than our goal, is all about finance.
Yes.
And because that gives us the ability to be able to move forward or not. Now, contrary to what the markets and the media and the different social media platforms will have you believe, that money is easy to get and it's very, very cheap, on the surface it is. But for the majority of people, it's still quite a forensic process. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of lead work to get a pre-approval or to get a loan. And just as a side note too, if you are entertaining purchasing, you don't want to be finding the house and getting the finance. You want to be armed with the pre-approval. Yep, absolutely. critical in today's environment that we are. So the lead up to finance takes some work. And I
Typically
know,
about 6 weeks if you're really starting from scratch.
well, I was actually going to say that I've got some clients where we're into month 5 and they're still making the minor adjustments to get the right product for the right opportunity. And the reason behind that is because they've got an element of sophistication, whether it be multiple properties and self-employed or what have you. But it's not an overnight. It's not an overnight result. And the Christmas is going to take another 4 to 6 weeks out of it if you let it. But you can still be making those strategic moves now, then having some methodical patience.
Yes.
So that over the Christmas period, stuff is still moving in the background for you so that you can hit the ground running, should you choose to, in the beginning of the year, rather than using January 1 as this ultimate reset button to start. It shouldn't be that way. No. You should be starting now, so that you can activate in the new year.
That's right. Yeah, so you hit the ground running. Yeah, so we've done ready. So the aim bit is honing down the strategy. Okay, what are we buying? Where are we buying? What's it mean in terms of cash flow in the portfolio? What are the constraints in terms of finance that steers us into a particular area? So this is where you actually sit down with your consultant and map out a plan of what you're trying to get. What is it? Is it a unit? Is it a house? Is it a house with development potential? What does the cash flow look like on it? And then finally, it's the fire is the actual execution of going and finding the...
Is that no pun intended?
No pun intended.
I can actually see the heading of this podcast now, ready, aim, fire. Yeah. That's what we'll go with. So, but with just coming back to the aim for a minute, because people's aim can be quite erratic at times because it's whatever's shiny or what potentially...
is moving faster.
Yeah. On the surface. Yes. And if it's moving faster now, there's a good chance that you've missed the boat.
Correct.
But so people tend to take on board an aim for what is shiny and what is gaining or getting the most media attention, which is often for all the wrong reasons or not understanding the reasons why. And is it a short-term movement in value, or is this going to be a continual perpetuation of value?
i.e. the fundamentals.
Correct. Yeah. So if let's use an example here now. So there's a lot of regional areas that are doing very, very well, and we're regional investors as well, where it matters and where it counts and where it works. But there are some areas which are, we've talked about this before, which are subpar regional, we'll call them, where there's been a transient shift from the metropolitan areas out to these areas that have seen pretty good price growth, to be fair. However, when there's not a lot of transactions, because the area is quite small, you don't need a lot of transactions to affect the data. So we've got to keep that in mind. However, what happens, so it's a tree change. It's the ultimate tree change. So what happens when we get back to an element of normality in the future, whether that be next month, next year, or in 5 years' time, whatever it may be, where, as we've talked about before, the majority of the workforce will go back to the office environment. Now, whether that be on a 4-1 or a 3-2 is yet to be seen, but it will happen to some degree. Then you have a choice, if you're too far away from work because you've been working remotely thanks to technology, to move back to Metropolis or to quit your job and find another job to replace your income in a subpar area without enough economy drivers. And so you're at this pinch point of a decision-making time. So what you will see is this reversal of population growth in these smaller areas back to Metropolis where the jobs are, and you'll get the decrease in value.
That's right. So the trend in population at the moment is transient in nature rather than traditional and long-term in nature, right? Of course, they have underlying fundamentals, right? Where people do the tree change and the sea change in that sense. But we still haven't got it.
That's why I'm smiling at you. So what Victor's referring to there is in the tree change and sea change. In the very beginning of COVID, I tried to get sea change Mark II.
As in the letter C.
Out in COVID, just saying. But it just never took off.
Never took off,
I'll try it. I'll keep going with it. Anyway. So there is that massive transient shift in population. Now, whether that be a long-lasting effect is yet to be seen. I have a feeling that it will. And that we will see that pendulum swing back the other way. Once again, I stress, in the subpar regional areas, not in the major regional areas where there's multiple income drivers, economy drivers and the like, that will stay solid.
Which is one of the fundamentals, right? Access to employment, right, within reasonable driving distance is really important for growth and population stability in an area.
Yeah, because technology is clearly enhancing every day and it will continue to do so. But as humans, we need collaboration, we need culture.
That's right.
And we can only get that by mingling with each other.
There's only so many Zoom calls you can do to try and make culture. It doesn't happen.
True story.
Yeah.
9,436 and counting. But it's good. But on a serious note, COVID, the silver lining in this has just brought forward what we can do.
Absolutely.
As an economy working remotely to a degree and adapt very, very quickly. There's been a lot of good things come out of COVID. Like, yes, there's been job loss, economy hits, health at the top of it. That's all very, very sad. But there's also an element of I think you said it in the beginning, a massive reset. Draw the line in the sand for a lot of people and let's change direction and move forward. And that's where we're up to today.
And it's brought to the forefront, like, what people really want out of life in terms of employment, in terms of lifestyle, in terms of area they want to be, and also in terms of really looking at it from a viewpoint of anything's possible, especially when finance is, the interest rate is so low. The dream seems to be achievable. And this is where in adversity, this is where there is a flow of wealth from people that are prepared, from people that are unprepared to the people that are prepared, right? And this is where you'd want to use this time to become that group of prepared people so that next year there's a flow of wealth to you.
And it usually happens every major crisis.
Yes, it does.
And I know we keep going back to the GFC as the sort of comparable crisis to some degree, which was universally affecting everybody as this is. There was a massive transfer of wealth at that point in time across all different sectors. And we can already see it happening today again throughout the different sectors. I'm not talking about just property either.
Yes.
But it's not just those that are educated that had a go. There was those that were willing to have a go at something in a methodical fashion, though, so that it wasn't just throw caution to the wind. Maybe there was some degree of that, but it was, I've done enough recon, I've done enough education, I am now going to do something. I'm pulling the trigger. I've ready, I've aimed, now I'm firing.
Yep, absolutely. So that was acquisition, right? What most people then forget is that once you've got a portfolio, or as you're getting a portfolio, there's a management component of it as well, where you're managing the debt, you're managing the day-to-day running of the portfolio, and you're also managing your mindset and education as well along the way.
Let's just go back to the acquisition just for one moment, because people keep looking for the diamond in the rough.
Yes.
Well, that was the old expression. Now it's the unicorn.
Yeah.
Let's find the unicorn property. Screw that. Give me the workhorse.
Yes.
Like, that's what I want.
Absolutely. That's the one that's going to get in the money.
Yeah, because I want to know the unicorn is something that's flashy and it does a lot very quickly, potentially with no fundamentals behind it. The workhorse is the one that is there through the good, the bad, and keeps delivering.
It's dependable.
Let's look at, and that's what we've always said. Judge a property on a crisis, not when everything else is going up. How does it work for you when everything else is bad?
Yep.
So get the workhorse, not the unicorn.
I like that. Yeah. So management, right? So obviously you're going to manage the portfolio. So the acquisition phase of it. You're going to manage the finance and the financial aspect of it. And you also got to manage the mindset, your mindset, and your investing partner's mindset. So that could be a spouse, it could be a brother, it's whoever's investing with you, or also guiding you, right? So if you're flocking around with negative people, it's going to drag you down. So what you want to do is lean on people that have had more achievement than you have. So you are always punching above your weight in that sense. If you look at it from and this is saying it as respectfully as possible, right? Most people, when they're starting out, especially the younger generation, they're starting out to invest. They're guided by their parents, right? And they're then therefore guided by their debt paradigm. They're also guided by their life experience. And the simple question you need to ask is, okay, what's their level of success, right? Have they invested well? Have they invested via luck, or have they invested via planning?
I think we're going to see a change, though. It won't be necessarily guided by their parents. It'll be guided by the internet.
Yes.
Guided by the social media.
Whoever's noisier.
Yeah. Guided by Big Brother.
Yeah.
That's what it'll come down to, because whatever's shiny, whatever's instant on the news feed and people's success stories and what have you, which is usually exaggerated, which then comes back to the collaboration that you have with your team or your friends, whatever it may be, that you could collectively move in the same direction. And I keep saying collectively because it is a collective effort.
Yep.
Very rarely do we see people that are successful individually, like just absolutely cocoon themselves and are by themselves, they counsel themselves and they move forward. That's a unique individual. 99.9% of the time, the successful investors have 3, 4, 5 people, a dozen people around them, which they can lean on and help make decisions. That could be advisors, that could be accountants, solicitors,
Good mortgage brokers.
great mortgage brokers, or even just other investors who are willing to share not just their success, but their failures.
Yep.
Because anyone can make up the good numbers, but show me the bad real numbers. You know, that's like, you're only an idiot if you make the same mistake twice.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So earlier on, Steve, we were talking about how we've had a run of repairs in our individual portfolios, right? And it comes and goes. And I guess one of the management tools that you need to have is obviously have the understanding of the need for maintenance, when and when not to do it. Having a solid plan in terms of knowing that every appliance, every aspect of the property has got a lifetime.
That's a shelf life.
Yeah, it's got a shelf life, yeah. So we need to be planning towards that. But more importantly, we need to be managing the property manager to help manage the property. Most people go on to manage the property rather than the property manager. This is where you need to train yourself and put simple measures in place to help you manage that aspect of property investing. So in my portfolio and as you do in yours, we've got a dedicated email address for our statements. We've got a dedicated email address for our maintenance requests, right? And knowing that it's devoid from the daily clutter of emails because it's a specific email address that you're getting those emails to.
And potentially millions of dollars
Yes.
riding on it.
That's right. Yeah. So you want to have it as a standalone entity or a business on its own. And so you've got a business, which is property investing, and each property is a branch of your larger company. And that's how you need to look at it. So one branch may be profitable, the other branch that year is not profitable because it's going through a renovation, right? So you're refitting the shop and all the sort of stuff, right? So if you're using that analogy. So therefore, in that year, you are investing some capital in it so that the ensuing years you'll get some more cash flow out of it or consistency out of it. And that's how I look at my portfolio, is that each property has got its own unique plan within the overall investing plan. So it's got its own mini goal that heads the entire portfolio towards the larger goal.
Yeah, and I look at it the same way, and maybe just a different way of looking at it or explanation is that each property has an absolute reason for being in the portfolio. Yes. It's not a matter of, well, this is value, I'll buy that, so it's another front door to the portfolio. It is, how does it complement what I already have, and how does it actually propel the portfolio forward? So whether that be a pigeon pear scenario where we're trying to create cash flow or equity, whatever it looks like at that point in time, there is a reason for being there. Gone are the days of buying, well, I'm just going to go out and buy 30 properties just as a number, and it'll grow by 5% every year forever and ever, amen, and I'm just going to create that wealth base. Those days probably were never there, but they were certainly well talked about.
Yep.
More so than ever, especially with today's environment that we have. I'm not talking about COVID, I'm just talking about governance, compliance, and all the other factors around monetary policy, i.e. the loan to you. More so than ever, everything needs to be tactical.
Yep. Yeah.
every step you take.
Absolutely, and part of managing that portfolio is also managing the mortgages, right? So they you don't bury your head in the sand to say, okay, it's ticking along, and it's fine. You need to always come back to it at least at the very very minimum annually to see, okay, is this the right product still for this particular property and for my portfolio? Is there a potential where we can restructure the debt to and further enhance the cash flow? It's amazing the number of people you and I sit down in front of where they haven't had a look at the interest rate, or given today's interest rate, and because they were told about a year ago that they can't qualify.
That was the best it could get.
Yeah, it's on the back burner, and the most hardest thing when you're looking at a portfolio in terms of cash flow is if it's not impacting lifestyle, right? You're not feeling that in the hip pocket.
That is the most dangerous aspect of investing, is when you're not feeling it.
Yes. Yeah.
Because when you're not feeling it, you're not concentrating on it, and you are just getting by, and you might be getting by really easily. But have you ever noticed when you actually need the money and the rates are high and you're scrambling for the cash flow, you are all in.
That's right.
You are managing that particular moment in time, making the phone calls, seeing the broker, talking to the accountant, having reviews with us or whatever it may be. That's when you're active. The dangerous part of it is when you don't need to be.
Correct. Yeah. So, we don't want the portfolio to get to that. Now, we're not saying that your portfolio should be costing you heaps of dollars, so you're actually feeling the impact. What we're trying to say is that you need to be on the numbers. You need to understand what it is costing you or what is it bringing in, so that we can look at the various operational parts of it, i.e. the mortgage, the rates, the rent, the property management, the maintenance, and fine-tune that all along the way, so that more and more it becomes less imposing in terms of drag on cash flow, and you're using the information to shape and form the portfolio, and it also gives you that ability to not be transactional but strategic in your further acquisitions as well.
It's a great point, because if you're not feeling it, which is not a bad place to be,
it's a good place to be.
It's a great place to be, but what's the opportunity cost? It could be just a restructure of the loan, a tweak here, a tweak there, maybe increase some rent, change an insurer and negotiate a rate, and you've gone from a position of being maybe not being able to borrow again to now being able to, or increasing the loan amount, pre-approval, whatever it may be, or it just might be there's a little bit more fat in the portfolio. So either way, be invested in your own situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, never be passive. Property is not passive.
No, it isn't, and neither is it a 40-year plan. It's a 1-year plan repeated 40 times, right? Because you need you need to manage it every single year, every single month to be exact, to know where it is, so that you know where it's going. You can project, and you can change directions of it based on what you need in life and what the economy is doing and what the portfolio is bringing to you to begin with, right? So it's really important to have a finger on the pulse, so that way you're then transitioning into your consolidation phase, which is the other thing that you want to be looking at over Christmas, right? Like, a lot of people think that consolidation happens in the end. Consolidation actually starts right in the beginning. Right?
Yeah,
because you
could be consolidation of expenses.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, or the entire position. And I think, once again, that's a really good point, because it's not always about purchasing.
Yes.
Sometimes you'll make more money by doing nothing and taking stock of the situation, but also being active in your own environment, as it is. Now, if we go back to the Ready, Aim, Fire, and we've talked about preparation, we've talked about location, then we've talked about execution, and now management. It's about managing the managers.
Yes.
It's taking stock of the situation continually. It's the 40-year plan once every year. I want to say that's mine. I want to steal that. But it's...
So you Alibaba and the 40 Thieves, are you?
It's something that is evolving all the time. There is no one plan, and this comes down to the reviews that we hold as many times as we can, because it is always evolving. There are so many different components. There are not 4 blocks. There are not 4 pillars.
They're all intermingled, don't they? They come together.
But there's more. Yeah. There's more. It's not 4 pillars of investing. Here they are. I mean, from a holistic point of view, there might be, but there's about 144.
Yeah.
because there are so many different moving parts and components which need constant attention, review, or movement, so that you're actually getting the best out of everything that you possibly could.
Yeah.
And here's the upside that we really haven't talked about. The more you involve yourself, the better you become educated.
Yeah.
And shouldn't you be educated when you've got a couple of $1 million on the line?
Absolutely.
It's anyway. There it is.
There it is. Yeah. So using that segue in terms of consolidation, right? In this festive season, that's what you're doing. You're consolidating all of your experiences over the last decade, more so the last year, i.e. 2020, and using that to help you consolidate your position for the following 10 years, right? But we're drilling it back to 2021. So what's going to happen in this 1 year? And then we're also setting up milestones for 3 years down the track and 5 years down the track, knowing that our aiming point is 10 years down the track in terms of this is where the position needs to be. Now, it doesn't mean that it's the number of properties you're acquiring. It doesn't mean that it's where you're acquiring. What it means is taking stock, putting plans in place, and then actually executing that plan. So in other words, pick up the phone, call someone, call us, call your advisor, call your accountant, call your mortgage broker to start that ball rolling within the first 2 weeks of January, so that you're gaining traction. Otherwise, mid-January to the tail end of January, you've got your work taking over, right? So you are then working within the plans of your work environment as opposed to the working within the plans of your environment.
And it's more noisy.
Yes.
Yeah, you've just gone back. Maybe you've come back from a Christmas break. You're back at work. You're a little depressed. Life sucks. I'm back at work. But you're fully immersed in that is what you're trying to say. And so there's no time for anything else. The moves that you do now will hold you in good stead. This is what will happen though. The majority of people will come. I'm talking about the general public. The majority of people will go away. They'll have a break, whether it be for 2 days, 2 weeks, a month, whatever it may be. Set the New Year's resolutions. Come back, with their hands up, ready to swing the bat and make some big moves right here, right now, for the rest of their life. But so will everybody else.
Yes.
And so what you will see is accountants, advisors, brokers have this channel of people they're trying to accommodate, and you'll be but one of those people somewhere down the line. So in real terms, it could be March.
Yeah.
Or even April before you're actually doing something. Now, that doesn't mean that the longer it takes, the worse it is. Sometimes it needs to take that long to get all the pieces in the right order. But shortcut the process. Or sorry, not shortcut the process. Start earlier. Whatever you can do this side of the year, you should be doing it now. Even if it's having that conversation with your advisor, your broker, or your accountant, whatever it may be, just so that you know, here's the question, what are my next steps? What have I got to do X, Y, Z? You'll get the answer and activate.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Just remember that, the quality of a question will determine the quality of the answer and the quality of the guidance, right? Because you need to know very well within your mind where you want to head, and then you ask for guidance in a sense. And of course, to work out where you need to head, perhaps there is a consultation beforehand or some literature or some exercises that you need to do before you get able to work that out. And then that allows you to ask the right questions of the right team players to help guide you towards that.
What are some tips for the Christmas period? What shouldn't you do?
Don't make your resolutions on New Year's Eve. Right? You're half drunk to begin with, most people, and by midday, January 1st, you've already forgotten about it because you're still recovering from a hangover, right? So, me personally, I do my goal setting for the following year between Boxing Day and New Year's Day, right? So that on New Year's Day or 2nd of January, I'm ready to hit the ground running, and I've already hit the ground running because I've already starting to send out emails. I'm already starting to reach out and set meetings for my advisors. We have got our advisors, and we advise each other, and we've got...
have you booked in with me yet?
No, apparently your diary is too full. It seems like you are on a holiday or something.
Yeah, that'd be nice. But no, it's a good point. Like, don't get caught up in the moment.
Yep.
Think it through. And
take your time.
Yeah.
Take your time.
Now it sounds like we're contradicting what we said earlier on, but do take your time because you want to give it some serious thought. one of the things that you shouldn't be doing through the Christmas holiday break, if you will, if you're traveling and if you're going.
Oh yes, a favorite one, isn't it?
Yeah, don't buy the holiday home. Don't buy where you're holidaying.
Yeah, because you're being emotional.
Yeah, you're emotionally wrapped in that moment, and you've got a different filter on. Now, sometimes it does make sense to do it, perhaps.
90% of the time it does.
I was going to say, but most of the time it does. Most of the time it doesn't. But more so now, even those holiday areas, you'll be skewed by the data, because those holiday areas throughout Australia, or the East Coast especially, have actually had some pretty solid growth during COVID as everybody runs for the hills, so to speak. And so we've seen the data, which is always reverse facing, start to show positive signs in terms of growth. But there's not enough fundamentals. It's a moment in time.
Correct.
But I'm not complaining about that. My holiday home, as well as yours, because it's in the same area, has done very well. I don't know if I was telling you, my and for the if you haven't heard the story before, it's a service department off the plan holiday unit on the coast.
Ticks all the boxes for a good investment.
Yeah, it's not what to do. But thanks to COVID, my neighbour has contacted us and said, "What price? Ours is too small. We want yours as well." So it's name your price.
Happy days.
Well, it's not, because now I'm saying, well, no, I want it.
Yeah.
I want to keep it now because you want it. I want to keep it. No fundamentals, no thought process behind it, no logic behind it, other than don't buy the holiday home too early.
True.
So to speak. What other lessons not to do? Not lessons, but what not to do during the Christmas period?
Well, don't rack up the credit card debt. I mean, don't be an impulsive buyer, right? And a very long time ago, one of my friends, he had a really simple methodology to stop himself from spending. He used to put his credit card in a bowl of water and put it in the freezer, so it became a block of ice with the card in the middle. So if he were to find something that he wanted, he'd have to thaw out the card literally to purchase, right? And by the time the impulse is gone, and it worked a treat.
That's the best.
So in other words, put your card on ice.
Oh, was that like a true story, or was that like a funny one?
True one.
True one. Yeah.